Technology, it's everywhere, right? Well, guess where it can now be? It can now be all over your apartment complex. Today, I am joined by Kyle, and Kyle is part of Arise, and they bring smart technology to assets so that you can increase your NOI by saving money. It's pretty cool. We get into the weeds, and a lot of times people don't want to give out hard numbers or even ballparks, right? You ever speak with a contractor and they're like, they just don't want to give you a number to work with. Well, Kyle doesn't do that. He gives us all sorts of numbers to work with. He even gives you line items saying, hey, if you're trying to figure out if this is the right fit for you, you can throw this amount of money on this line and you can figure out, as you're running your numbers, if this is going to be a good fit. So I hope that you listen to this entire episode because you know what, technology, like it or not, everything is always progressing forward. Some of us might think it's backwards. I don't know. I don't know where you're at on that. However, you're not going to get away from it. And so you want to be on the front end of things, right? You want to be at least aware, and you never want to be a late adopter. So anyhow, listen to the whole episode with Kyle explaining smart technology in apartments so that you can at least be in the know and not be a late adopter. All right. Remember, if you have not already hit that subscribe button, please hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't shared this episode or this podcast with anybody, what are you waiting for? Remember, be the connector. So help this podcast, help Ask Me How I Know, reach out to lots of people because you are willing to share it. I appreciate you, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome episode of Ask Me How I Know. I am so glad you joined me because this episode is going to be bar none unlike any other episode. And yeah, you've heard me say that before, and I've totally fulfilled that it has been unlike anything other than we've had before in the past. And today I am actually going to be featuring a person and a quote product. I'm going to call it a product. And it's going to absolutely blow your mind and revolutionize how you're looking at your assets in the apartment space. So I'm going to just jump in and say, Kyle, I am so excited. We've had this on the calendar for I don't know how many months, and I am so excited. Today's the day.
Yes, today is the day, and I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to share with your listeners about Arise and just about smart apartment technology.
Yeah, I was super impressed. I think someone on your team reached out to me via LinkedIn, and I hop on this call, and I didn't know, but I'm a curious person. And so, just hopping on a call and learning more about the product, it was super duper cool. And I thought, this is something everyone needs to know. It's one of those okay, this is the next wave of things. This is where things are headed, and people need to be, you could be a early adopter or a late adopter, but technology is something that ultimately we have to adopt. So I'm giving all of this around the edges about what we're talking about. So I'm going to just hand this over to you and say, tell us about Arise and what is going on.
Yeah, so Arise, we're a smart apartment technology company, and we manufacture all the smart home devices. So when you think of things like smart thermostats, smart locks, water leak detectors, motion and entryway sensors, things like that, that can help you reduce operational expenses and also help to increase your NOI and asset value. We create those. So there are a lot of vendors in the marketplace, and I guess our differentiator is that we do manufacture our own devices and the software that it couples with. So as it relates to apartment investing, I've kind of carved out a niche for myself in talking with investors to show what kind of value it can bring. And yeah, there hasn't been too much adoption, especially in the value add space where we're dealing with Class B and Class C properties. But there is huge potential, and there's money being left on the table if you're not starting to implement. And so my job is just to educate folks about how they can adopt it, what that process is like, and go through the financials with them. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds on this because this is a cool topic. And as you said, this is still very early stage adoption for operators. And so let's just walk through that process of, let's go through one more time, what are the individual components that we can add in that are going to be smart tech?
So that's a great question. The way I like to look at it is we take a look at a specific property, figure out, what class type it is. If it's a Class C property, you're probably not going to go with a full mix of, say, you can see above me, you got your smart locks, your water leak detectors, your thermostats, motion and entryway sensors. So we'll look at the asset. If you have a building that's, was built in 1970s to 1990s, you might have some leak issues. And so being able to be proactive about finding those leaks, maybe, a resident isn't going to necessarily say that there's a leak under the sink. They'll just try and fix it themselves or leave it there. But if you have a sensor under there, that tenant will get a notification to their phone in real time, as well as your property management team saying that there's a leak in this specific place, so it can be triaged and you can get ahead of it. Other cases, yes.
I'm going to pause you right there. I'm totally going to interrupt you along the way and be like, okay,
That's
wait,
totally
you got to
fine.
stop right there and say, okay, so I've got this leak. You're putting, is it a band? What is it? Because this is a question people are going to be like, what are you actually putting on there?
So it's a really small device. There's a number of ways to mount it, but basically it looks kind of like I have this AirPods case here, and at the bottom there would be two little metal prongs that sit just millimeters above the surface area of where water could potentially leak. And so as soon as moisture is detected on those prongs, it'll ping in real time, like I said, the resident's phone and also the PM's phone, so that they'll know exactly what unit it's in, the time that it happened, and which sensor got set off.
Okay, awesome. So we are going to cover sinks. We're going to cover kitchen sinks, the bathroom sinks, toilets.
Yeah, toilets, laundry rooms, water heaters. And then if you get down into like boiler rooms and stuff like that, there's also applications there.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm like, I know I feel like I'm stating the obvious by saying all of those things, but I'm like, sometimes when we're on the treadmill working out, listening to podcasts, we're a little oxygen deprived, and so like sometimes it's good to spell it out really well. Okay,
it is.
So we've got our water. Have you had any? Do you have any? Customers that have clients that have been successful with sidestepping a big and using the water portion alone?
Yeah, so one of our clients is a Class A property in San Diego, Shift Apartments. They had problems with their pool leaking. So they have a rooftop pool, so that was leaking, but they also had in-unit leaks and a whole variety of other leaks around the property. And so we just happened to have that conversation with them at the right time. So they implemented our water leak detectors all over the property. And since then, they've mitigated about, I think it's something like over $200,000 worth of potential damages that they would have paid out if they weren't being proactive about finding them. So that's just one use case scenario.
Yeah.
Another one, there's a crawl space that had a leaky pipe, and it had been leaking for who knows how long, but they put the sensors on and the pipe actually burst. And so there was a huge flood, and it happened at like 1 a.m. So
of course, that's when all bad things happen.
That is. So unfortunately, there's not like a tenant that will get a notification. So the PM team got notified, and luckily somebody was up and saw the notification and was able to get out there and sync up with the plumber and figure out how to remedy the situation before there were hundreds of gallons of water just filling that space.
It's really powerful. I've heard of other stories with a similar, in this one there are some other products that I'm aware of, and so it's like, yeah, it's amazing. And here's the thing: I grew up in California. When I moved out of California, it was like drought years. This is 5 years ago. Don't water your lawn. People are turning each other in for watering lawns and stuff. So if you're not living in a place where water is scarce and a hot commodity, you might not understand the full implications of this. But water is such a precious resource. We take it for granted all the time. So I'm like really, especially like always happy when I hear about ways to protect and preserve water.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we have the water, and that is super cool. But what about these doors?
Yeah, so
we're going into the future.
So there's a number of different reasons why, as an investor in a property, you would put smart locks on your doors.
Okay,
number one, Go ahead.
Can we explain what a smart, before we get into why, can we explain the what? Like,
Yeah.
just in case, I mean, it is, I really want to honor that someone might want to ask that question.
Oh, 100%, 100%. So basically, in place of your traditional lock, you have a lock with a keypad, but it also has a chip in it that'll allow you to communicate to your phone. So you can have access control via your phone. So from the tenant standpoint, they'll be able to unlock their door using their phone. They don't have to use a keypad. If they have friends coming over, they can send them an access code. So when that friend comes over, they can just punch the code into the door lock. Don't need a key. You don't need to get up to open it. You know, or if you have a dog walker and you're out of the house, you can shoot them a code. They can pop in, pop out. And then on the property management side, you know, if you're doing self-guided tours, you know, in the day of COVID, you can send access codes to prospective tenants. They can punch that code in. When they leave, that code expires. So, and then you have the operational efficiency side of it. So you have these door locks sitting on the door. You're not having to change locks out every time you have turnover. So if you're turning over, you know, I don't know, let's say 20% of your units in a year, that's man hours of sending maintenance staff to do that and rekey locks. And then you have to have a rekeying machine and all this stuff. So you pay for the lock one time and it sits there for as long as you want it to.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. And I could see a lot of, I mean, I can see all the uses, not all, because I mean,
Yeah.
there's always something more, because there's always a wait, there's more. But what I was going to ask was, with those individual codes and everything, are they unique? So let's just say that dog walker comes on Monday. Can they use the same code on Thursday?
So it's highly customizable. You can set the parameters of that access control to however you want it. So you can set a time period for until it expires. So if you want it available for 1 hour before it expires, you can do that. If you want to set recurring days, say like, you know, Monday and Thursday, you're having the dog walker come between 1 and 2, that code will only be valid for that person for those specific times on those specific days.
Wow, I just
Yeah.
feel like my Google Calendar just became more powerful in a sense, you know, like that concept of, yep, here's the window, this is when this works. That's amazing.
Yeah,
And I could see this on the clubhouses or on the, you know,
exactly.
on all of the exterior doors to go into main buildings and such. That is
Hmm.
fantastic. Okay, now thank you for indulging me in the what. Now let's talk
Hmm.
about some of the other reasons why, if there are any other additional reasons why, you know, people want to use this.
Absolutely. So from the get-go, there's curb appeal. You know, if you have two properties that are very similar within the same vicinity, one has smart locks, one doesn't. You know, we have studies that show that, you know, a huge group of, like, say, millennials, like the study that we did, it was 81% of millennials were willing to pay up to $31 more just for an apartment that was equipped with a smart lock. So that doesn't include thermostats or anything like that. You know, so people are willing to pay more for this specific product. And so aside from that, if you're able to charge a bit of a rent premium for that, it wouldn't have to be much, but anytime you increase your NOI, you're increasing your net property value. So depending on, you know, if you just bought a property, you're planning to refi in 2 years, you know, you'd break even in 18 to 24 months. So it's right in line with that investment period. So by the time you go to refi, your property value is already increased and you've increased your NOI without any loss after that point.
And then wow, that's really great. That all makes sense. And then on the sell side, when you're disposing of the property, you know, the asset, you now have, you know, one leg up on somebody else potentially.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
I'm tracking with you. Okay, so we've got 2 out of the 5, and I love, if you're watching this over on YouTube, then you get to see why I said 2 out of 5. If you're on the podcast, on the treadmill, driving, whatever, sorry, head over later. So should we talk about thermostats next?
Yeah, so thermostats, that's a big one. So I'll start with the community side before we go into the in-unit part of it. So
Okay.
from the community standpoint, if you're using smart thermostats, say in hallways, in common areas, gym, laundry rooms, wherever it might be, you know, you can auto set temperatures to adjust just from, you know, the PM can adjust it from their dashboard, a couple clicks of a button, and say from, you know, this time to this time when there's nobody in there, you know, in the winter, you'll dial the temperature back. In the summer, you'll dial it up a little bit. So you could save about 10% on your energy bill just from doing that. So then we pass that along
Huge.
to, yeah, the resident side. and it's pretty much the same thing. So it'll learn their temperature setting habits over time, and then it'll just start to automatically adjust the temperature based on their usage and the time of year and the time of day without them having to ever touch it. So it's, it takes the headache out of like, oh, I'm getting hot because I just did a at-home workout and they got to adjust the thermostat, or they're going to bed so they want to just turn it down a little bit. It'll already learn all those things, so they never have to really touch it. So it's optimizing for not only their preferences but also for the time of year, making sure that their energy bill is going to be as low as it can be.
Oh, it feels very, all the almost like AI coming into the space. But and since a lot of people are already used to having the Nest or something like that in their own primary residence, so if you're a sponsor, if you're an investor and you're utilizing this, think how much upsell you can have with your residents when it's like they're having one of those luxuries of a homeowner. That is a luxury item. Now, is that something that you guys are seeing very many like C-class properties using, or is this still top tier class A? Or
No, I love that question. I love that you asked that. So that's not something I would recommend for a class C property, at least at this time. Maybe in the future, 5 years from now, whatever it might be, but it's not normalized right now. So yes, you see them in your class A, and as all class A trends do, they start to trickle down. You do see a lot of B and B plus assets with the smart thermostats, depending on if they've started to already adopt different types of smart tech or prop tech in general. And because the other thing is say you're leasing up, you still have 10, 15% vacancy, you might want to bulk set what the temperatures are of all of those to keep your costs low. And so from the PM side, they can just do that with the click of a button, select which units they want to adjust to what temperature, click OK, and boom, you don't have to worry about sending someone to each of those 10, 15, 20 units to adjust the temperature manually. You're saving on man hours there.
Definitely saving on man hours. Now, is this something that cost wise, does it just not, I'm just going to put it out there really bluntly, right? Like, so is it just not cost effective to put some of this smart tech in the C-class properties?
So what it is, what can you do as far as rent premium? Obviously, if you're putting out a capital expenditure for these items, you need a way to break even on them. So you're either going to break even on them by saving on operational costs or by being able to raise rents. So there's not as much disposable income in a lot of Class C properties. So if you are doing a value add play and you're already planning to be able to raise rent, $150, $200, and there's room in there to add it, and it's not breaking your capex budget, and it's not going to raise rents to where it's unattractive to the marketplace, then yeah, you can find ways to work that out. But in general, we just try and see what the property is, what the demographic is that's living there, and try and align products with that property. That makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. When we think about, we're comparing rents and different, who the competition is and everything, it makes a big difference. Definitely. Okay. All right. Now, before we go on to the next awesome item, I feel like it's almost like a game show, and it's not, because this is actually so serious and so beneficial and really awesome. So I don't want to minimize that by that comment. But, what are we talking about cost wise? If we want to go and put these awesome thermostats, in the units, what are we looking at? You can give me a range or however you want to answer this.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're talking about one specific product, let's go with the thermostats. You might be looking at $100 a unit to put those in. And then however you want to, play that. If you're going the operational play, you can kind of see you'd have to do an analysis of what you could save over that year and see if it makes sense to raise rents at all, keep it where it's at. But let's say you go with the full suite of products. More often than not, your capex is coming in at below $500 a door. So when you're underwriting, if you just add a line item in there, for smart tech, add in $500 a door, and see what that is. More often than not, you can roll smart apartment tech into that reno budget, that rehab budget, because it's not going to break the bank depending on what you're doing.
That's really great to actually have a number just to say, just roll this number in there and you can kind of work with that number.
Mhm.
I can just say, on top of all investors out there, thank you. Because most of the time we just need a starting spot just to know, like, I just need to plug the numbers in. I need to see how this works. And then maybe I scale down and say, all right, I need to piece this out and only go with these pieces because 500 doesn't make sense. That's really, really great. So what else do we have? We still have a couple other awesome smart tech that can be added.
Mhm. So
Let's go
yeah,
on.
what I have, if for those watching the little icons above me, what I have there is our current product line. We have more stuff coming this year, but we have your smart motion sensors and entryway sensors. So those are more for security. So for like a Class C garden style apartment community, these might be a good fit. For motion sensors, they're great for common areas in lieu of cameras. So if you, depending on where you place a camera, like say around a pool, if it's facing a resident's door, that could be a privacy concern. You can get into, the weeds of that being an issue as an operator. Because
Right.
yeah, it's a breach of privacy. So if you have a motion sensor, they're only going to pick up human activity. They're not going to pick up debris or birds flying by, things like that. So let's say, it's 10 o'clock, nobody's supposed to be at the pool or in the gym. If that picks up human activity, and you have on-site security that has the app on their phone, they'll get pinged, letting them know someone entered, at the pool, and they can go check it out, and see what's going on there. So and then as far as like the entryway sensors, those are mainly used for, say you leave your apartment and you left the window open, you'll get notified after, let's say, an hour that you left the window open or you left the door open. And maybe you don't want those open. So, you call someone, hey, can you close that for me?
I'll
Something like
send you a
that.
code. It's only going
Yeah.
to work for the next 10 minutes. Get going.
Boom.
Okay.
Full
So,
circle.
right, exactly. Okay. Now I have to ask, putting you on the spot, what is different about this motion sensor? What makes it smart tech versus there are tons of, I mean, there are motion sensors out there. So how is this one any different? Aside from it does ping your phone.
So really the only difference is, you're able to set different modes. So if you're at home, you may not, want it on every time you cross the room, it pings your phone. Yeah, so there's just different settings that you can do, away mode at home, or just turn it off altogether. And then there's just the whole human aspect of not picking up, if your dog walks across the room, or if it's outside, if a plastic bag flies across the way and it picks it up, it won't do that. That's really it. It's a really straightforward product.
Yeah, I assumed, but I always like to ask. I ask all my questions. Okay.
I love that.
Do we have one more?
So I think I covered those two together.
Okay.
What we do have coming up, we will have a doorbell cam. So it'd be like a Ring doorbell type of deal, and then a smart smoke detector. So once again, just protecting the asset. You have water as the number one insurance claim for multifamily properties, and then there's fire. If you can say someone's not home, but they left the oven on or something's burning, and they're not there to know, your PM team will still get notified right away. And if if something, smoke is detected, a fire is going off, and you can get there right away, you want to get ahead of it before it gets worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Now, what does this installation process look like?
So installation process, we'll usually send out someone to go on site and make sure that our hub is going to work in that community, see how many hubs you'll need in each unit, see if the signal is going to travel through walls and things like that. So we'll do a site inspection, then we'll do a final order of products, making sure that we got all the counts correct and everything. And then we'll just schedule it out. And usually what that looks like is phases. So if, say you're doing door locks, you're going to come out and see if you need to do any additional cuts in the door. If you don't, you just pop them on. And then same with the thermostats and whatnot. So you probably phase it out. If you got a 100-unit property, maybe do 20 units a day, depending on the product mix and how long each unit is going to take.
Okay. So about 20 units a day.
Yeah, I mean,
if we're doing a bigger project type thing.
If you're doing a bigger project, I mean, it also depends on the product mix. If you have, say, 5 products going in, obviously going to take a little longer. If you've just got smart locks going in, you'll probably knock out the whole 100 in a day, maybe 2.
Okay.
So,
Okay. That's good because I can hear, some of the PMs listening to this, and
well, the
uh,
other thing is you have to communicate with the tenants. You have to put it out there first. Hey guys, we're going to be doing this from Monday to Wednesday. If the availability is not going to work, or if you have an issue with someone entering your apartment, let us know, and then you have to go back and work around those individuals and whatnot. So
okay. So have you guys over at Arise, have y'all created like a little tutorial, like the minute and 47-second tutorial on how to, welcome to your
yes,
new smart life? Like,
yes. So that is another thing that we do is so on the resident side, we have training videos to get them up to speed on how to download the app, how to connect everything to their phones. And then on the staff side, we do free training when everything is getting installed. We bring everyone together and we go through product training, how to troubleshoot things, so that not only your leasing staff knows, but your maintenance staff knows, anybody that needs to know on the property management team knows how to operate everything.
that is really, really slick. That's
Yeah.
what my dad would say. That's slick. Like it is. It's really slick. It's really efficient, and it's really helpful. For on a multiple levels. Very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that potential operators could be considering as they're looking at smart tech?
So one thing that I urge people to do, not even a suggestion, but if you're vetting providers, just ask them a few things. How are they managing your data? Security is a big thing, especially in the cyber age. You want to make sure, ask them what kind of encryption they're using, how they're storing your data, maybe what platform the software is built on, because that'll let just how secure their backend encryption is. Aside from that, go ahead.
How would we know if it was encrypted well? I mean, a lot of people don't know, they're not, and it changes so quickly. So how would they know? What would the standard as of right now, in 2021, because it will change?
Oh, it will. I would say start by asking, what platform is the software built on? Is it built on Amazon AWS or Amazon Web Services? It's extremely secure. A lot of the money systems in the world are built on Amazon. If not, what other cloud provider is it built on? Or is it not built on a cloud service provider? Those are things you want to know. And then as far as encryption, you want at least 128-bit encryption. So that's a little too in the weeds to describe, but there's 128-bit and then there's 256-bit encryption. So the 256-bit, that's where you're getting into your bank level encryption. That's what we use at Arise, and it's extremely difficult to hack. And from each communication point, there's an encryption on that, and then there's an encryption on, from the device to the hub to Amazon servers back to your phone. Each layer is encrypted, so it's extremely hard to get to that data.
Okay, so that's actually really, Kyle, that's like a great thing to point out, because depending on, and for those who are property managers who might be listening, is that might be a question that comes up. People are becoming more savvy. And so that might be a question a potential resident asks, and they might want to understand a little bit about that. I could see, I've worked with a lot of different people over the years. I could see that coming up at least once a year. Yeah. Definitely. Okay.
Most definitely. Some other things, I'll just hit on two more that I think are really important. And this is just in terms of vetting providers, because there are so many out there. Warranties, you want to see who takes care of the warranties, how long they are, and what they cover. And when I say who is handling them, you might be sold by a provider that's just an integrator. They provide the software and you can choose any product on the market to integrate with. But then you need to know, if you have a Nest thermostat and an August door lock, who are you going to for the warranty? Are you going to the manufacturer, or are you going to the person that sold the software to you? And so that's important to know. And then also how long they are and what they cover.
Is that one of the benefits of Arise? Because you guys create your own product, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
You'd mentioned that. Okay.
Yeah, one-stop shop. So any questions? So that's the other thing. So as far as support, tenants will have their own support line, and the PM staff will have their own support line. So they're never having to communicate with each other and try and figure things out on their own.
That is very good. That protects relationships right there.
It does. It does.
That is really fantastic. What are some things what are some, shoot. I wanted to back up. I wanted to ask this question, but I don't want to interrupt.
No,
I'm becoming very self-aware that I interrupt a lot. And I am like, oh, I need to get a grip on it. But, we were talking about kind of like the who and the what early on with encryption. And what would we say? What was the point right before encryption? There's another component of that, of the provider. We were talking about Amazon being a provider. What other cloud base? Are there some that if someone said, "Oh, we're using this," that we'd be like, absolutely not participating in that? Is there anyone that's really truly like kind of dangerous?
So not really. It's just a matter if they're shying away from the question. If they're beating around the bush, get off the phone. Like you don't want to deal with that, because then you're going to run into problems of, are they managing the data? What are they doing with it? Are they selling it and not telling you? And then if they send you a 20-page contract that you have to read through, you may miss that part where they say they can do whatever they want with your data. And, you don't want that. Wow.
Right. Yeah. Seriously. Okay. That leads to another question. I told you, I'm so curious. The next question would be, how about contracts? What is the relationship that, someone's going to have with Arise? Because, you had mentioned one of my friends, Todd Thorpe at MDU Nation, totally giving him a plug. Everybody go listen to his podcast. He's fantastic. But he has a background, working with, cable and different other amenities that you can put on, your assets. I'm stumbling over my words this afternoon. All that to say, I understand there were contracts involved. And if you're listening, you can always go back to that podcast episode and check out that podcast episode with Todd, where he explains it all in detail. So what's the relationship with Arise, with an operator?
This is a great question. So we have a number of different purchasing models that, just depending on if you want to purchase something and just have it as an OpEx cost and pay over time until you own the devices, that's one way. If you want to provide all the capital up front and own everything, you can do it that way. So it just depends on the purchase model. So if you're buying everything up front, the relationship is just month to month. There's a cloud service cost of $5 a month per unit. So, if on 100 units, that would come out to about $6,000 a year. Or if you want to pay that up front and not have an OpEx cost, it's at $50 a door. So you'd save about $1,000 on that. But then the relationship is, like I said, month to month. Then there's a subscription model, if you will, where you can pay something up front, nothing up front. And then we figure out what that contract looks like. So if you're going to be paying, say, $20 a month per unit for 2 years, and that's what it takes for Arise to get to break even on that, then the contract length is 2 years. So we just work to see, how much is the investment and over how long will that take to get paid off, and then we just cap the contract at that.
Okay, that's really helpful information. Okay. Once again, as always, I'm like, oh, we have to start wrapping up. But you have so much, this information is rich, it's valuable, and you're giving really important details that if somebody were, considering this for, one of their assets, they actually have some real numbers to start playing with, manipulating and everything. So it's super, super helpful. And I appreciate it. Is there anything else that you would say, yeah, I need to make sure that everybody understands X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, one last thing, and I think it's a big deal. It's going back to vetting providers, would be asking about connectivity issues. Just be straight up. Yeah. So so the thing is if you're talking to a provider and they're providing a software platform and you can connect, say 10 devices from 10 different manufacturers, well, now you have 10 times the problems that could happen. So usually what happens is somebody will update their thermostat software, or then the lock software needs to get updated. But if you're not updating it, or the tenant isn't updating them manually, and it's supposed to communicate to a software platform that also needs to get updated, then it's not going to connect how it's supposed to. And so with Arise, because we built everything in-house, we don't have those connectivity issues. All our devices are meant to speak to each other directly. They're not built on different band waves. They're not, built on different software platforms. So one thing is just to ask about what kind of connectivity issues can I expect, because that's going to decrease resident satisfaction if they're having to deal with these problems themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, yes. Okay. That makes a ton of sense. Mm-hmm. Okay, so people have been listening to this. They're really excited. They're very interested. They've crunched some numbers on the treadmill, wherever they're at. Now they want to reach out to you. What is the best way to reach out?
LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. So you can find me, Kyle Finney. If you search Kyle Finney Arise, I usually come up. That's the best way. I respond very quickly on there. And I would just suggest, if you're looking at a property, you're thinking about running numbers, you're analyzing a deal, you want to underwrite it, and you just want some numbers, that's a great time to just reach out, throw some numbers at you. You can see if it works or if it doesn't. And then we can always, talk about which product mix is going to be the best for that specific asset.
That is fantastic. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me on this awesome episode. You made it fantastic.
Thank you. You have a lot of energy to you, and you keep things fun. I really enjoy it.
I didn't interrupt too much, is what you're saying. No, I'm kidding. I really have to cut back my interrupting. But thank you so much. And for all my awesome listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. Please remember, if you haven't already subscribed, go down, hit the subscribe button. You don't want to miss another episode. And if you haven't shared this with somebody, remember, this podcast grows by organic means. You are that person. Be that connector with somebody else out there by sharing. Until next time, go find your freedom. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. This episode was brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. They are dedicated to helping people like you, you, my awesome listeners, develop passive income and legacy wealth through multifamily investing. Feel free to check out their website, 3keysinvestments.com, to see if there's an offering that will help your portfolio grow and meet all of your needs. If you haven't already rated, reviewed, subscribed, liked, all of those bells and whistles, I would be absolutely honored if you would do that for Ask Me How I Know. Thanks again, and go make it a great day.